A child's scream shattered the night as Mary Sullivan watched in horror. Through the grimy window of the Gilded Stag, she saw a small figure, a girl no older than 6, being dragged toward a waiting carriage. The child's desperate cries went ignored by passers-by, accustomed to Chicago's darker transactions. Before Mary could move, blood exploded across her vision as Edward Blackwood's fist connected with her face, sending her crashing against the tavern wall. "You'll fetch a fine price in California." He snarled, fingers tightening in her copper hair. "But your daughter fair-haired, blue-eyed, now she's worth triple." His smile revealed teeth filed to unsettling points. "Even now my men are collecting her from that Herod and Henderson." "Emma." Mary gasped, tasting iron as panic surged through her veins. The child outside forgotten as maternal terror consumed her world. "Don't worry." Blackwood purred, pressing a blade against her throat. "She'll be treated well until she's sold. Can't damage merchandise." The knife bit deeper. "Unlike you." Mary drove her knee upward with desperate strength. As Blackwood doubled over, she lunged for the door, but his massive hand closed around her ankle, dragging her back. The knife flashed in candlelight, descending toward her exposed throat. The window exploded, inward shards of glass, suspended like deadly diamonds, in the frozen moment before a dark silhouette vaulted through. The figure moved with inhuman speed, a shadow given lethal purpose. Blackwood's knife clattered to the floor as powerful hands lifted him bodily, hurling him against the wall with such force that plaster cracked and paintings crashed around his crumpled form. Blood streaming down her face, Mary stared at her rescuer, tall, copper-skinned, with eyes like midnight that assessed her with predatory intensity. "They take your child now," he stated, his accented voice carrying urgent command. "4 men, armed. We must move." "How do you—" "No time." He gripped her arm, pulling her toward the shattered window. Trust or lose her forever. Heart hammering against her ribs, Mary made the choice that would forever alter her existence. She placed her hand in the stranger's and followed him into the Chicago night, where somewhere in the darkness her baby daughter awaited either rescue or a fate worse than death. 3 months earlier, Mary had believed life couldn't possibly become more desperate. The boarding house room she shared with 8-month-old Emma had become both sanctuary and prison since James had abandoned them chasing California gold while she carried their child. Emma's pneumonia had reduced her to a fever-racked bundle, each labored breath a knife in Mary's heart. "She needs medicine," the physician had declared dispassionately. 75 cents. Without it. He'd shrugged already, moving toward the door, as if Mary's child were merely one more casualty Chicago could easily absorb. Returning to their stifling room, Mary had found Mrs. Henderson waiting, thin lips pressed beneath predatory eyes. The landlady's gaze lingered on Emma with disturbing interest. "Such a pretty child," she'd remarked, voice dripping false sympathy. "Shame about her circumstances. A respectable family could provide what you clearly cannot." The implied threat clung to Mary's skin like coal smoke long after Henderson departed. That night, as Emma's breathing grew more labored, Mary penned a note offering evening companionship to any gentleman willing to pay. With trembling fingers, she pinned it to the boarding house's community board, shame burning her throat raw. From shadows across the street, dark eyes watched. Lakota had been tracking the red-haired woman for days, drawn by something he couldn't name. Perhaps she reminded him of his sister before the massacre, the same fierce devotion to her child, the same willingness to sacrifice everything. Or perhaps it was simply that, in this poison-hearted Sioux city, they were both outsiders marked for destruction. When he saw her note, read the desperation between its careful lines, something long dormant stirred within him, a purpose he'd thought died with his village years ago. A purpose that now drove him through Chicago's moonless streets, tracking the men who had taken a child who was not theirs to take. "They move east," Lakota whispered, crouched beside Mary in an alley 2 blocks from Mrs. Henderson's boarding house. 4 men. One carries child wrapped in blue blanket. Emma's blanket. Mary confirmed, heart lurching. Is she? Drugged, not harmed, no crying. The clinical assessment both reassured and terrified her. How do we— Wait. Coda interrupted, raising a hand for silence. Across the street, an elegant carriage had drawn to a stop outside a townhouse Mary recognized with dawning horror. The Morrison Home for Children, whose chairwoman had often visited the poor districts offering charitable assistance to struggling mothers. Mrs. Morrison. Mary breathed as the imposing woman emerged from the townhouse. The Benevolent Society. They're part of this— Coda's expression hardened. Churchwomen choose children. Rich families pay for fair ones. Others go west to brothels. His voice dropped lower. Been watching many moons. Could never prove connection to Sheriff Matthews. Matthews. Mary's blood ran cold. The city sheriff is involved in child trafficking. More than involved. Controls it. Coda's eyes reflected moonlight like a predator's. Same man who burned my village 6 years ago. Took children then, too. This revelation staggered Mary pieces, sliding into horrifying alignment. The official indifference to disappearances from immigrant neighborhoods. The swift action against a mother deemed unsuitable. The well-oiled machinery that had moved against her and Emma with such efficiency. We need to get her back, she whispered, desperation clawing at her chest. Now. Coda studied the townhouse with the patience of a hunter. 3 guards inside, 1 at door 2 patrolling, more in back rooms with other children. His gaze shifted to Mary. Can you follow orders exactly? No questions, lives depend on it. The intensity of his stare made her swallow hard before nodding. Good. He removed a small knife from his belt, pressing it into her palm. When time comes, be ready to run with child. Do not hesitate. Do not look back. Before Mary could question this alarming instruction, Coda had melted into the shadows, leaving her alone with the unfamiliar weight of the blade and the heavier burden of absolute trust in a stranger. Minutes stretched like hours as she watched the Morrison home, imagining Emma inside, frightened, drugged, separated from the only security she had ever known. When action came, it exploded with disorienting swiftness. A crash from the rear of the building diverted the door guard's attention. As he moved to investigate, Mary glimpsed Coda's shadow flowing across the townhouse garden with impossible silence. A muffled thud, then stillness. Minutes later, the front door opened. Mrs. Morrison herself emerged, escorting a well-dressed couple down the steps. The paperwork will be processed by morning, Mary heard her saying. Such a lovely addition to your family. Blue eyes are particularly valuable these days. Cold fury rose in Mary's throat. These people were discussing her daughter like livestock at auction. The couple departed in their carriage, and Mrs. Morrison returned inside. Moments later, a bird call 3 notes repeated twice sounded from nearby. The signal Coda had described. Heart thundering, Mary slipped across the street and up the townhouse steps. The front door stood slightly ajar, impossible negligence for such an establishment unless deliberately arranged. She pushed it open, knife clutched and whitened knuckles, and entered the lion's den. The entrance hall was deserted, dimly lit by a single lamp. Following Coda's instructions, Mary moved silently toward the rear office, where he believed the youngest children were kept. As she approached, voices drifted through a partially open door. Or, finest specimen we've acquired this month, Mrs. Morrison was saying. Blackwood says the mother was attempting to earn the medicine money at the Gilded Stag when he approached her. Pathetic creature. And she's been disposed of, a male voice inquired. Blackwood is handling it personally. By morning, she'll be either dead or en route to San Francisco with the other merchandise. Mary's hand tightened on the knife as bile rose in her throat. These monsters discussed murder, with the same casual tone they might use for ordering tea. The door to an adjoining room opened, and Mary pressed herself against the wall, breath frozen in her lungs. A guard passed within inches, never glancing in her direction. As his footsteps receded, she gathered her courage and peered through the office doorway. Mrs. Morrison sat at an ornate desk, recording entries in a ledger. Behind her, a row of small cradles lined the wall. Mary's heart stopped as she spotted Emma's distinctive blonde curls in the nearest one. Before she could move, a deafening crash shattered the night's stillness, something massive falling in a distant part of the house. Mrs. Morrison jerked to her feet, irritation creasing her aristocratic features. "Jenkins," she called sharply, striding toward the door. "What incompetence is this?" Mary flattened herself behind a decorative screen as the woman stalked past, the scent of expensive perfume lingering in her wake. The moment she disappeared, Mary darted into the office, racing to Emma's cradle. Her daughter lay unnaturally still, face flushed with fever, but breathing steadily. Beside the cradle sat a small brown bottle, the medicine Mary had been unable to afford. With trembling hands, she gathered Emma into her arms, tucking the medicine into her pocket. A floorboard creaked behind her. "I wouldn't move another inch, Mrs. Sullivan." Mary turned, slowly clutching Emma protectively to her chest. Sheriff Roland Matthews stood in the doorway, revolver aimed steadily at her heart. His uniform was immaculate, his silver star gleaming in the lamplight, the very image of law and authority, concealing the corruption beneath. Remarkable how predictable a mother's instincts can be. He commented, voice silky with false congeniality. "Like moths to flame, you'll fly straight into destruction for your offspring. You're selling children." Mary stated flatly, buying precious seconds as her eyes searched desperately for escape. "Your own people's children." Matthews shrugged. "Business is business. Irish brats, Italian mongrels, German whelps, the dregs of Europe washing up on our shores. We simply redistribute the excess to those willing to pay premium prices." His smile chilled her blood. "Your daughter's coloring alone is worth several $100s to the right buyer. You're a monster." "I'm a businessman," he corrected. "And you, Mrs. Sullivan, are merchandise that's proving troublesome." He gestured with the revolver. "Now put the child down and step away. My associate, Mrs. Morrison, has specific clients already selected." Mary's mind raced, desperate for options. Emma stirred against her chest, whimpering softly as the laudanum began wearing off. Matthews's attention shifted momentarily to the child. Glass shattered as Coda crashed through the window behind the sheriff, landing with cat-like grace. Matthews whirled, firing twice in rapid succession. The bullets passed through empty air as Coda seemed to dissolve into shadow, reappearing at the sheriff's side with supernatural speed. A vicious struggle ensued, the men crashing against furniture, grappling for control of the weapon. Mary backed toward the door, Emma clutched tightly against her, only to find her escape blocked by Mrs. Morrison, whose aristocratic features had transformed into something predatory. "Give me the child," the woman demanded, advancing slowly. "Immediately." "Never." Mary brandished Coda's knife, her hand surprisingly steady. "Not while I breathe." Morrison's laugh held genuine amusement. "Do you truly think you can threaten me? I have connections throughout Chicago society. One word from me." A gunshot exploded through the room. Morrison's eyes widened in shocked disbelief as crimson blossomed across her expensive bodice. She crumpled, revealing Coda behind her, Matthews' revolver smoking in his hand. The sheriff himself lay motionless on the floor, a growing crimson halo surrounding his head. Mary stared in horror at the tableau of violence, Emma wailing against her chest. "We must go," Coda urged, already moving toward the window. "Others come." "You killed them," Mary whispered, shock momentarily overwhelming her urgent need to escape. "Him, yes," Coda confirmed grimly. "Her, perhaps. Choice was made when they threatened child." His dark eyes met hers, unflinching. Some deaths prevent many more. Shouts erupted from elsewhere in the building as the remaining guards discovered the disturbance. With no more time for moral deliberation, Mary followed Coda through the window into the frigid Chicago night, her daughter's life secured, but her own world forever transformed. Breathe slower, Coda instructed as they huddled in a ramshackle cabin on Chicago's outskirts. Fear makes noise inside. They hunt with dogs tonight. Mary struggled to control her ragged breathing, one hand pressed against Emma's mouth to muffle her feverish whimpers. Outside lanterns bobbed in the darkness as search parties combed the area. Deputies, private security, hired thugs, all hunting the woman who had disrupted Blackwood and Matthew's lucrative operation. "How did you know?" she whispered when the searchers had moved temporarily beyond earshot. "About Emma, about Morrison's home." Coda's expression darkened. "6 winters ago, Sioux soldiers attacked my village while warriors hunted. I returned to find Ash's bodies. My sister dead, her daughter taken." His voice remained steady, but something burned beneath its surface. "I tracked child for 3 years. Trail led to Chicago, to children's homes, to charitable placements. Understanding dawned. You've been investigating them all this time, learning Sioux ways, following money paths, building evidence." His mouth twisted bitterly. "But Sioux law protects Sioux criminals. Proof disappears. Witnesses die. And now you've killed a sheriff." Mary stated the magnitude of their situation, settling like lead in her stomach. "They'll hunt us to the ends of the earth." "Yes." Coda's agreement was matter of fact. Unless what? "Unless we vanish." His eyes met hers, intensity burning in their depths. "West, to my brother's band. Beyond Sioux settlements." The proposition was so outlandish that Mary nearly laughed, despite their dire circumstances. "You want me to leave civilization to live among—" She caught herself before saying "savages," the newspaper term suddenly repugnant when applied to the man who had risked everything to save her child. "Among Lakota," Coda finished, a hint of challenge in his tone. "Where Emma breathes clean air, where no one sells children for gold." He studied her reaction. "Choice is yours. Stay and fight alone, or come with me." Mary looked down at Emma, the medicine already working its healing magic, color returning to her fevered cheeks. What future awaited them in Chicago now? Hunted by the law, targeted by traffickers, forever looking over their shoulders. "When do we leave?" she asked, decision crystallizing with surprising clarity. "Yeah, now," Coda replied, already gathering their meager possessions. While blood trail is still fresh and they hunt close to city. By dawn, they had rendezvoused with Coda's friend Chayton at a hidden camp outside the city limits. A covered wagon awaited provision for the journey west. As Chicago's silhouette faded behind them, Mary experienced a sensation so unfamiliar, she almost didn't recognize it. Hope. Sheriff Matthews survived. The bullet had grazed his skull rather than penetrating it, leaving him with a livid scar and a hatred that burned hotter than any physical pain. Mrs. Morrison had not been so fortunate. Her funeral drew Chicago's elite, all publicly mourning the charitable soul taken by a savage's hand, while privately calculating how her absence might benefit their own ambitions. Matthews cared nothing for Morrison's death beyond the inconvenience it caused his operation. His singular focus remained fixed on 2 objectives: reclaiming the Sullivan child, whose sale had already been arranged with a wealthy San Francisco couple, and ending the existence of the Lakota warrior who had humiliated him twice now. "I want them found," he snarled at his assembled deputies and hired guns. "The woman, the child, and the Indian. $1,000 for the child alive, $500 each for the others dead or alive." "Sir," ventured Deputy Collins hesitantly, "there's been talk about the Morrison home. Questions from the Tribune about children going missing." or handle it." Matthews cut him off coldly. "That's what I pay you for. Plant evidence implicating Morrison alone if necessary. I won't have this operation compromised by sentimentality over a few immigrant brats." As the men dispersed, Blackwood remained behind his urbane manner, at odds with the vicious calculation in his eyes. "This has become considerably more expensive than anticipated, Sheriff. I expect results. You'll have them," Matthews assured him, concealing his contempt. Once this mess was resolved, Blackwood too would meet with an unfortunate accident. Too many loose ends, too many potential witnesses. When it was over, only Matthews would remain to enjoy the profits of their years-long collaboration. But first he had a ghost to hunt. The journey west became a brutal education for Mary. City-bred and accustomed to crowded tenements, she found herself confronting vast prairies, relentless weather, and the constant anxiety of pursuit. Yet alongside these hardships came unexpected discoveries, star-filled skies, unmarred by coal smoke, the quiet companionship of their small traveling party, and most surprisingly, her own resilience. Emma thrived despite the difficult conditions. Her pneumonia receded, completely replaced by robust health that manifested in curious exploration of their surroundings and delighted interaction with Coda, who treated her with solemn respect that invariably dissolved into rare smiles when she grasped his finger with her tiny hand. On their 10th night of travel, as they camped in a sheltered hollow, Mary finally asked the question that had burned in her mind since Chicago. "Why do they call you the Ghost?" Coda looked up sharply from the fire he was building. "Who told you this name?" "I heard Matthews say it at Morrison's. He seemed afraid." Something dangerous flickered in Coda's eyes before he returned to his task. "After village burned, after sister died, and niece disappeared, I tracked soldiers. One by one they would vanish from camps. Found later not dead, but marked." His hands continued working methodically despite the chilling implication of his words. Talk began. Superstitious talk. Ghost who could not be shot, could not be caught, and Matthews was their commander. Mary concluded softly. Coda nodded once. He ordered village burned, ordered children taken. For the first time, Mary glimpsed the depth of rage he kept carefully contained. "I saved 7 for last. Him and 6 officers who selected children like cattle." "Did you kill them?" she asked, needing to know exactly whom she had aligned herself with. 5 died in accidents. Coda replied with disturbing calm. One by his own hand after finding others. Matthews escaped when recalled to Chicago. His gaze met hers directly. "I do not kill without cause, but I do not forget debts of blood." Before Mary could respond, Chayton appeared at the edge of their small camp, tension evident in his posture. "Riders," he reported tersely. "Coming fast from east." Matthews. Mary clutched Emma closer. Not enough time passed for news to reach him. Coda concluded, already dousing their fire. "Local trouble. Perhaps bounty hunters who recognized description from telegraph office." Mary's blood chilled. Their pursuit had spread faster than anticipated, casting their net of hunters wider across the territories. Within minutes, their camp was dismantled, the wagon concealed among dense underbrush, their trail obscured by Coda's expert woodcraft. They retreated to a rocky outcropping that offered both concealment and defensive position. As darkness deepened, riders appeared in the valley below. 6 men heavily armed, moving with the purposeful patience of experienced trackers. "They follow our trail," Chayton whispered. "We'll find wagon by morning." Coda's expression remained impassive, but Mary could sense the rapid calculations behind his calm exterior. Too many to fight, too open to run. His gaze swept the terrain before settling on a decision. "Chayton, take wagon north at first light. Make obvious trail. Mary and child come with me south through Badlands. Split up, Mary questioned anxiously. Is that wise? Only chance, Coda replied. Hunters must choose which trail to follow. Either way, someone escapes. The strategy was sound but terrifying in its implications. Either she and Emma would evade capture while Chayton drew their pursuers away, or they would become the decoys while Chayton escaped. Neither outcome guaranteed safety for all. Dawn brought clear skies and tense farewells as they implemented their desperate gambit. Mary watched Chayton depart with the wagon, making deliberate noise and leaving obvious tracks bait for the hunters below. Now we move. Coda directed securing Emma to Mary's back with a carrier he'd fashioned from hides. Silently, touch only stone, leave no trail. What followed was the most grueling physical challenge of Mary's life. For hours they traversed harsh terrain, jagged rocks that shredded her city-softened boots, narrow passages that required squeezing through with Emma clutched protectively to her chest, steep climbs that left her muscles screaming in protest. By midday, they had reached a vantage point that allowed them to look back toward their abandoned camp. Mary's heart sank as she counted all 6 riders following Chayton's northern trail. No division, she observed hope warring with concern. They all chose the wagon. Too easy. Coda growled unexpected alarm in his voice. Too obvious. Chayton would not make such clear trail unless... He broke off, scanning the landscape with renewed intensity. There. Mary followed his gaze to spot 2 additional riders approaching from the east reinforcements, or perhaps more experienced trackers who had recognized the deception for what it was. They hunt us specifically, Coda concluded grimly. Wagon is diversion to them. What do we do? Keep moving. Different direction. He pointed west toward increasingly inhospitable terrain. Must reach LaPorte Pass before they catch our trail. 3 days of punishing travel followed. Mary's body, already pushed beyond previous limits, discovered reserves of strength she hadn't known existed. Emma miraculously endured the hardship with resilience, as if sensing the gravity of their situation. On the 3rd evening, as they huddled in the scant shelter of a rock, overhang a snowstorm threatening on the horizon, Coda finally admitted what Mary had begun to suspect. We are followed still, he said quietly, as Emma slept between them, exhaustion having claimed her after their difficult day. 2 riders, very skilled, very determined. How close? Mary whispered, fear clawing at her throat. Too close. Will reach us by midday tomorrow. His expression was grave in the dim light of their tiny smokeless fire. Cannot outrun with child, cannot hide in snow. The implications settled like ice in Mary's veins. We have to fight. Coda nodded, once approval flickering in his eyes at her directness. I fight. You take Emma and continue west if I fall. He pointed toward a notch in the distant mountains. LaPorte Pass there. Beyond lies valley where brothers band winters. Tell them Coda sent you seeking sanctuary. And if you don't fall? Mary challenged, refusing to accept his fatalism. Something like surprise crossed his stoic features. Then we continue together. Through the night, they prepared. Coda fashioned crude but effective traps along the most likely approach routes. He showed Mary how to use his knife, not just defensively, but offensively if necessary, where to strike for maximum effect with minimum strength. Last option only. He emphasized watching her practice the movements. Run first, hide second. Fight only when cornered. As dawn broke, bringing clear skies, rather than the anticipated snow, Mary secured Emma in her carrier with special care. The child seemed to sense the tension, remaining unusually quiet as they prepared their meager belongings for swift departure. They come, Coda announced suddenly, his head lifting like a wolf scenting prey. From Ridge, moving fast. Mary strained her eyes toward the indicated direction, seeing nothing but empty landscape. "I don't trust," he interrupted, already moving into position behind a large boulder that overlooked their approach path. "When shooting starts, run west. Do not look back. I won't leave you." Mary insisted, surprising herself with the fierce certainty of her declaration. Coda turned something unreadable, flashing across his features. Before he could respond, a rifle shot cracked through the morning stillness, the bullet splintering stone inches from his head. "Go!" he shouted, shoving her toward the western escape route as he returned fire with deadly precision. Mary ran, Emma clutched against her chest, heart thundering as gunshots echoed behind her. She had covered perhaps 50 yards when another shot rang out from ahead, not behind. She skidded to a halt as a rider appeared on the ridge before her rifle aimed directly at her heart. "That's far enough, Mrs. Sullivan," the man called, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. "Set the child down and step away." Trapped between pursuers, Mary backed against a large boulder, sheltering Emma with her body. The rider advanced slowly, rifle unwavering. "Mr. Blackwood sends his regards." The bounty hunter continued conversationally. "Seems you've caused quite the inconvenience in Chicago. Blackwood is a child trafficker and murderer." Mary spat, mind-racing for options. "And you're no better than he is." The man shrugged, unmoved by moral judgments. "Business is business, ma'am. Now the child, if you please." "Never." A shot rang out, and Mary flinched, but it was the bounty hunter who jerked, surprise flooding his features as crimson blossomed across his chest. He toppled from his horse, revealing Chayton standing behind him, rifle still raised. "No hurry," the young Lakota warrior urged, rushing forward to assist her. "Coda needs help." They raced back toward the camp, to find Coda locked in desperate hand-to-hand combat with the second pursuer, a massive man whose skill matched the Lakota warrior's own. As they grappled at the edge of a steep drop, neither able to gain clear advantage, the bounty hunter spotted the newcomers. With sudden viciousness, he slammed his head forward into Coda's face, momentarily stunning him, then broke free to draw a hidden pistol. Time seemed to slow as the weapon rose toward Coda's heart. Without conscious thought, Mary thrust Emma into Chayton's arms and hurled herself forward, Coda's knife clutched in her hand. The blade sank into the bounty hunter's side just as he fired. Coda staggered back, blood spreading across his shoulder. The bounty hunter howled in pain and rage, rounding on Mary with murderous intent, only to find himself teetering at cliff's edge, balance compromised by his wound. In the suspended moment before he fell, his eyes met Mary's with shocked recognition that this immigrant woman had bested him. Then he was gone, his scream fading as he plummeted to the rocks below. Mary rushed to Coda's side, heart in her throat as she assessed his wound. "How bad?" "Will live." He grimaced, clutching his shoulder. Bullet passed through. His gaze lifted to her face, something like wonder in his expression. "You risked life for mine. You risked yours for ours first," she replied, simply helping him to his feet. "We're even now." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Not even. Not yet." He turned to Chayton, clearly relieved to see his friend alive. "How did you find us?" "Followed other trackers," Chayton explained, returning Emma to Mary's eager arms. "Lost wagon pursuers 2 days ago. Circled back. We must move quickly." Coda decided, already gathering essential supplies despite his injury. "More will come when these do not return." As they prepared to depart, Mary glanced back at the bloody scene of their desperate battle. She had killed a man today, had made the choice to take one life to save another. The weight of that decision would remain with her, but so would the certainty that she would make the same choice again to protect those she now considered family. "West," she said firmly, settling Emma against her chest. "To your brother's band." Mahpia's winter camp nestled in a sheltered valley, surrounded by protective ridges, a location chosen for both its natural defenses and proximity to water and game. As Mary rode into the circle of tipis behind Coda and Chayton, she felt dozens of curious eyes tracking their progress. Some openly hostile, others merely wary, all assessing. Children paused in their play to stare at the red-haired woman and her fair-skinned baby. Women looked up from their tasks, exchanging glances and whispered comments. Warriors stood with folded arms, their expressions revealing nothing of their thoughts. At the center of the camp, a tall, imposing figure awaited them, Mahpia, Coda's brother, and the band's war chief. Though older than Coda, the family resemblance was unmistakable in his proud bearing and penetrating gaze. Unlike his brother, who had adopted elements of Wasatchu clothing for practicality, Mahpia wore traditional Lakota attire, his status evident in every detail. Coda dismounted with careful dignity, concealing the pain of his still-healing shoulder wound as he approached his brother. They spoke in rapid Lakota tension, evident in Mahpia's posture, as he frequently glanced toward Mary and Emma during the conversation. Finally, Coda beckoned Mary forward. Heart-pounding, she approached with Emma in her arms, conscious of the weight of judgment surrounding them. Coda had coached her on proper protocol during their journey. Now she summoned those instructions along with every ounce of courage she possessed. "I am Mary Sullivan," she stated clearly. "I seek sanctuary for myself and my daughter Emma." Mahpia studied her with unnerving intensity, as if reading not just her words, but the intentions behind them. "Why should Lakota protect Wasatchu woman?" he asked, his English accented but precise. "Wasatchu bring only death to people." Before Mary could respond, a commotion erupted at the camp's perimeter. A warrior raced toward Mahpia, speaking urgently in Lakota. The chief's expression darkened as he turned back to Coda. "Our riders approach," he announced grimly, "many armed." Coda's reaction was immediate. "Matthews." He concluded, his hand moving instinctively to his weapons. "Found us sooner than expected." The camp transformed with military precision. Women and children hurried to central teepees. Warriors collected weapons and took defensive positions. Scouts raced to vantage points to assess the approaching threat. Mary clutched Emma closer, fear and guilt warring in her chest. "I've brought this danger to your people," she said to Mahpia. "I should—" "No time for regrets." The chief cut her off, his assessing gaze shifting to strategic evaluation of the camp's defenses. "Decision is made when battle comes." He turned to Coda. "How many?" "At least 20 from scouts report," Coda replied. "Well-armed, determined." Mahpia's expression hardened. "Then we fight." As preparations continued around them, Coda guided Mary toward his own teepee. A location she noted was centrally positioned for maximum protection. "Stay with Emma here," he instructed, already collecting additional weapons. "If fighting reaches tippies, use this." He pressed a pistol into her hands, a weapon she had never held before. "Aim center, squeeze gently." The gravity of their situation struck Mary anew. This wasn't merely about her and Emma anymore. An entire community now faced violence because of the sanctuary they had offered. "Coda." She began, uncertain how to express the tangle of emotions constricting her chest. "If anything happens—" "Nothing happens," he interrupted firmly. "We protect what is ours." His hand touched her cheek briefly, their first intimate contact, before he ducked out of the teepee to join the camp's defense. Alone with Emma, Mary peered through a small gap in the teepee covering, watching as warriors positioned themselves with tactical precision around the camp's perimeter. Mahpia directed the operation with calm authority, placing his most experienced fighters at likely approach points while maintaining a mobile reserve at the camp's center. The tension built as minutes stretched into an hour with no attack materializing. Then, unexpectedly, a lone rider appeared at the edge of the camp. not charging in with guns blazing, but approaching slowly, deliberately. Mary gasped as she recognized Sheriff Matthews, his uniform immaculate despite the rigors of the trail silver star catching winter sunlight. The arrogance of him to ride alone into a camp of warriors who had every reason to kill him on sight. Mahpia and Coda met Matthews at the camp's edge, their stances mirroring each other's proud, unmovable, radiating authority. The contrast between Matthews's uniform and the Lakota leader's traditional attire created a visual metaphor for the clash of worlds unfolding before Mary's eyes. Unable to bear watching from a distance, she secured Emma in a makeshift cradle and slipped from the teepee, moving closer to overhear the confrontation. She remained partially concealed behind another dwelling close enough to witness, but not immediately visible. "I know she's here," Matthews was saying, his voice carrying in the winter air. "The Sullivan woman and her brat. Hand them over, and there need be no unpleasantness. No woman of that name among Lakota." Mapia replied impassively. "Sheriff looks in wrong place." Matthews's laugh held no humor. "Let's not play games, Chief. My men have the camp surrounded. No one leaves unless I permit it." His gaze swept the assembly landing briefly on Coda. "Especially not wanted murderers and child stealers. Only murderer here wears star." Coda responded, his voice deadly quiet. "Man who burns villages, sells children, calls himself law." A flicker of unease crossed Matthew's face before his arrogance reasserted itself. Bold accusations from a savage with a price on his head. He turned back to Mapia. "I'm authorized to offer terms. Surrender the woman and child, and your band can continue to this reservation unmolested. Refuse, and I cannot guarantee the safety of any here, including your women and children." The threat hung in the air like gun smoke. Mary's fingers dug into the tippy flap as she watched Mapia consider the sheriff with the cool assessment of a predator. "You bring 20 men against Lakota war camp." The chief finally said, contempt evident in his tone. "Threaten our families. Demand we betray sacred law of sanctuary." He spat on the ground between them. "Wasichu law means nothing here. Lakota law rules. You leave now or never leave." Matthews's hand drifted to his holstered pistol, a move that instantly caused every warrior in sight to tense. "I had hoped to resolve this peacefully," he said, though his expression suggested the opposite. "Your choice makes bloodshed inevitable." "Not inevitable," Mary called out, stepping into the open, despite Coda's warning glance. A plan had formed in her mind, desperate, dangerous, but possibly their only chance to avoid a massacre. "Mrs. Sullivan." The sheriff greeted her with mock politeness. "How kind of you to join us and spare these poor savages the consequences of their misplaced loyalty." "I haven't come to surrender." Mary clarified, her voice stronger than she felt. "I've come to propose a trial by combat." A murmur ran through the assembled Lakota. Matthew's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. "A what?" "Trial by combat," Mary repeated firmly. "You and Coda. Single combat to settle this matter once and for all." Mahpia's expression shifted from shock to grudging respect as he recognized her strategy. By invoking an ancient tradition honored by many tribal nations, she had offered a potential resolution that the warriors surrounding them would understand and respect, while potentially neutralizing Matthew's numerical advantage. "This is absurd," Matthews scoffed, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. "I represent the United States government. I don't engage in barbaric duels with—" "Afraid," Coda interrupted, stepping forward. "Man who burns sleeping women fears facing warrior awake." The taunt struck home. Matthews's face flushed with rage and humiliation as snickers rippled through the Lakota ranks. "I fear nothing least of all, you savage." "Then prove it," Mary pressed, sensing his vulnerability. "Win, and I'll go with you willingly. Emma, too." Lose, and you and your men leave never to return. My men won't honor such an agreement, Matthews protested, looking increasingly cornered. Or they will if they want to leave this valley alive. Mapia stated flatly. My warriors count your men. 22 against 64. Poor odds if fighting starts. This revelation clearly shocked Matthews, who had evidently underestimated the band's strength. Mary held her breath as she watched calculation replace bravado in the sheriff's eyes. A fair fight against Coda was dangerous, but open battle against superior numbers promised near certain defeat. Very well. He finally agreed, his voice tight with suppressed fury. Single combat. To first blood or surrender. To death. Coda countered immediately. Only way to end this. A chill ran down Mary's spine. She had proposed this solution, hoping to avoid bloodshed, not guarantee it. But as she met Coda's eyes, she understood the necessity. Matthews would never honor any resolution that left both of them alive. To death. Matthews confirmed, a predatory smile spreading across his features. Though I propose one amendment, not just me against the savage, me and my best man against him and you, Mrs. Sullivan. Gasps erupted from the assembled Lakota. Mary's blood ran cold as she realized Matthews's twisted counter-strategy forced her to participate, directly knowing she had no combat training. Create an uneven match while maintaining the appearance of fairness. No, Coda growled, stepping protectively in front of her. Woman does not fight. Then no agreement. Matthews shrugged with false regret. My men attack and many die on both sides, including, I suspect, the child. The manipulation was transparent but effective. Mary felt trapped between impossible choices: participate in a fight she couldn't hope to survive, or condemn dozens to death, including Emma. I'll do it, she heard herself say, stepping forward despite Coda's restraining hand. I accept the terms. Matthews's smile widened. Excellent. 1 hour to prepare, in the central clearing. With a mocking tip of his hat, he turned his horse and rode back toward his waiting men. The moment he was gone, Coda rounded on Mary, fury and fear warring in his expression. Why? He demanded. Why agree to this? Because he gave us no choice. She replied, trembling now that the moment of bravado had passed. And because this way at least some might survive. Mahpia interrupted whatever Coda might have said next. Come, he ordered, leading them toward his teepee. Little time to prepare. Inside the chief's dwelling, a council of war quickly assembled. Chaitan Wachiwi and several senior warriors joined them, faces grim, as Mapia outlined the situation. Matthews plays false, the chief concluded. We'll have second man positioned to kill, even if first combat goes against him. I should never have suggested this. Mary lamented the full danger of her impulsive proposal, now apparent. No. Mahpia surprised her by disagreeing. Was good strategy. Forced him to negotiate rather than attack immediately. Gave us time. He turned to the assembled warriors. Now we make our own strategy. What followed was a rapid exchange in Lakota, too quick for Mary to follow. Wachiwi took her arm, guiding her to a corner of the teepee, where several items lay prepared: a leather vest that would offer minimal protection, soft-soled moccasins for silent movement, and most surprisingly, a strange metal object. Woman's weapon. The elderly healer explained, demonstrating how the small blade concealed in an elaborate hair ornament could be released with a specific twist. Wear in braid. Use only when must. As Mary allowed herself to be prepared for battle, Coda approached, his expression solemn. I will protect you, he promised quietly. Focus only on staying alive. I handle both men if necessary. Who will he choose? She asked, fear finally breaking through her determination. His second fighter? Blackwood Coda replied with certainty. Man has personal grudge, will not trust others with revenge. This confirmation of her worst suspicions sent ice through Mary's veins. Blackwood, the monster who had first threatened Emma, who had intended to sell Mary West as merchandise, whose operation they had disrupted in Chicago, would now face her directly with lethal intent. "I'm afraid," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Good." Coda responded, surprising her. "Fear keeps you aware, keeps you alive." His hand closed over hers, warm and steady. "Remember what I taught in mountains. Wait for opening. Strike once decisively." As the hour drew to a close, Mary entrusted Emma to Wachiwi's care, pressing desperate kisses to her daughter's downy head. "If I don't return," she began, but the elderly woman cut her off. "You return," Wachiwi stated with surprising fierceness. "Child needs mother. Coda needs—" She paused, a knowing gleam entering her eye despite the grave circumstances. "Coda needs you." With these words echoing in her mind, Mary joined Coda at the edge of the central clearing, where a large circle had been marked in the frozen earth. Matthews awaited on the opposite side, and beside him, as Coda had predicted, stood Edward Blackwood. The businessman had exchanged his fine city clothes for practical frontier attire, but his predatory smile remained unchanged. "How touching," he called as they approached. The whore and the savage together at the end. Mary forced herself to meet his gaze steadily, refusing to show the terror clawing at her throat. Mapia stepped forward as designated arbitrator, his bearing regal, despite the grotesque ceremony he was about to oversee. "Terms are simple," he announced loudly for all to hear. "Combat continues until death or inability to continue. No interference from outside circle." His stern gaze swept the assembled spectators, Lakota warriors on one side, Matthews' men on the other. "Any who violate this die immediately." Matthews removed his gun belt as agreed, though Mary noted he retained a knife at his hip. Blackwood similarly disarmed, though something in his confident stance suggested hidden weapons. Coda carried only his hunting knife, while Mary had been given a similar blade, smaller but razor-sharp. "Begin," Mapia commanded, stepping back from the circle. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Blackwood lunged toward Mary with shocking speed, while Matthews circled more cautiously toward Coda. The battle had been joined. Mary barely evaded Blackwood's first attack, his knife-slicing air where her throat had been moments before. She stumbled backward, remembering Coda's training create distance force the attacker to overextend, wait for opportunity. "I'm going to enjoy this," Blackwood hissed, circling her like a shark scenting blood. "Should have finished you in Chicago." From the corner of her eye, Mary glimpsed Coda and Matthews locked in their own deadly dance, the sheriff's military training evident in his disciplined movements, Coda's natural grace allowing him to evade rather than engage directly. Blackwood attacked again, feinting left before slashing right. Mary twisted away, but not quickly enough. Fire exploded across her upper arm as his blade connected, drawing first blood. The businessman's eyes lit with sadistic pleasure. "One piece at a time," he promised, advancing relentlessly. "Like I do with all merchandise that needs breaking." Fear threatened to paralyze her. But Emma's face flashed in Mary's mind, her daughter, who deserved a world without monsters like Blackwood in it. Determination surged through her veins, replacing terror with cold focus. When Blackwood next attacked, Mary didn't retreat. Instead, she stepped into his movement, accepting a slash across her shoulder to drive her own knife toward his midsection. He twisted away, surprise registering on his face at her unexpected aggression. "The whore has teeth." He laughed, though wariness had entered his eyes. Across the circle, a shout of pain drew momentary attention. Matthews had scored against Coda, blood flowing from a wound to the Lakota warrior's thigh. The sheriff pressed his advantage with renewed vigor, forcing Coda into increasingly defensive postures. Mary's momentary distraction cost her dearly. Blackwood's fist connected with her jaw, sending her sprawling to the frozen earth, her knife skittering away. He pounced immediately, pinning her with his weight blade descending toward her heart. With desperate strength, Mary caught his wrist muscles straining to hold the knife mere inches from her chest. Blackwood's face loomed above her, twisted with hatred and perverted pleasure. "Your brat is next," he whispered for her ears alone. "Special clients pay extra for blue-eyed girls." Something snapped within Mary, a final barrier between the woman she had been and the warrior she needed to become. Her hand flew to her hair, releasing Wachiwi's hidden blade with a practiced twist. Before Blackwood registered the movement, she had driven the small weapon upward beneath his ribs, directly into his heart. His expression transformed from sadistic glee to stunned disbelief. The knife meant for her heart clattered harmlessly beside her as his strength evaporated. With a final bubbling gasp, Edward Blackwood collapsed, his blood soaking into the earth of a land he had never respected. Mary shoved his lifeless body aside, scrambling to her feet to find Coda, now in dire jeopardy. Matthews had gained the upper hand, forcing the injured warrior to one knee knife, poised for a killing strike. Without conscious thought, Mary snatched up her fallen blade and hurled herself across the circle. "Matthews," she screamed. The sheriff whirled instinctively, momentarily distracted exactly as she had intended. Coda seized the opening, driving his knife upward with lethal precision. Matthews howled in agony as the blade penetrated his side deep, but not immediately fatal. Staggering back, the sheriff clutched his wound, blood seeping between his fingers. His gaze darted between his fallen ally and his own increasingly hostile men, calculation replacing confidence. "This isn't over," he snarled, backing toward the edge of the circle. "Not by—" His words ended abruptly as an arrow blossomed in his chest, fired from somewhere beyond the gathered spectators. As Matthews crumpled, chaos erupted, his men reaching for weapons, Lakota warriors surging forward in response. "Hold!" Mapia's voice thundered across the clearing with unexpected power. "Who violated sacred circle?" A lone figure emerged from the tree line, a white man trail-worn and haggard, lowering a bow with grim satisfaction. "I did," he announced, stepping into the clearing. "And I'd do it again." Mary stared in disbelief, blood loss and exhaustion making her question her own senses. The newcomer's features, once familiar, but now hardened by experience, resolved into a face she had never expected to see again. "James." She whispered the world tilting dangerously around her. James Sullivan, husband, deserter, father of her child, stood before her, 6 years of hard living etched into his face. "Hello, Mary," he said simply, his eyes never leaving hers, even as chaos swirled around them. Darkness encroached at the edges of her vision, as blood loss and shock took their toll. The last thing Mary registered before consciousness fled was Coda catching her as she fell, his usually stoic face transformed by naked concern. "He claims he's been searching for you for months," Wachiwi explained as she changed the bandages on Mary's arm 3 days later. Followed rumors westward, always one step behind. Mary stared at the typey ceiling, still processing the impossible reality of James's return, and Matthews Blackwood, both dead. The elderly healer confirmed with pragmatic satisfaction. Good riddance to bad spirits. The battle's aftermath had unfolded while Mary lay unconscious, her wounds tended by Wachiwi's skilled hands. Matthew's men, leaderless and faced with overwhelming opposition, had surrendered without further bloodshed. Most had departed under escort to the nearest territorial outpost, carrying their own wounded and their commander's body. Blackwood had been buried in an unmarked grave outside the camp. More consideration than he deserved, in Mary's opinion, but consistent with Lakota beliefs about respecting even enemies in death. And James had remained granted reluctant hospitality by Mapia out of respect for his timely intervention, kept under close observation while Mary recovered. "He asks to see you," Wachiwi added, applying a healing salve to Mary's shoulder. and child. Emma hasn't seen him yet. Coda forbids until mother decides. The healer replied approval, evident in her tone. Says child's father is who raises her, not who plants seed. Warmth bloomed in Mary's chest at this evidence of Coda's protective commitment to Emma. Throughout her recovery, he had been a constant, steady presence tending her wounds alongside Wachiwi, bringing Emma to visit his typically stoic expression, softened by an emotion she was only now allowing herself to name. And Coda, his injuries. They're healing well, Wachiwi assured her. Warrior wears scars proudly when earned protecting family. The casualness with which the elderly woman categorized Mary and Emma as Coda's family sent color rising to Mary's cheeks. Before she could respond, the typee flap opened, admitting the subject of their conversation. Coda entered with measured steps that failed to completely disguise his lingering limp. Emma rode on his shoulders, her delighted giggles a balm to Mary's soul after the violence they had endured. Upon seeing her mother awake, the child squirmed to be let down, rushing to Mary's side with excited chatter that mixed English and Lakota with childish abandon. "Be careful, Wichapi," Coda cautioned, using the Lakota name Star that he had bestowed upon Emma during their journey west. "Mother still heals." "It's all right," Mary assured him, gathering her daughter close despite the protest from her wounded arm. "This is the best medicine." As Wachiwi discreetly departed, leaving the small family alone, Coda settled on the ground beside Mary's sleeping pallet, his dark eyes assessing her condition with careful attention. "You grow stronger," he observed with satisfaction. "Strong enough to face James," she replied, addressing directly what hung unspoken between them. Coda's expression remained neutral, though something flickered briefly in his eyes. "Your decision," he said carefully. "Your former husband, father of Wichapi." "Biologically, yes." Mary acknowledged, stroking Emma's hair as the child played contentedly with a small wooden horse. "But in every way that matters." She met Coda's gaze directly. "You've been more father to her in months than James was in her entire life." Relief visibly loosened the tension in Coda's shoulders, though his voice remained measured. "Sullivan claims he searched many moons for you. Says he returned to Chicago after finding no gold, discovered you gone, followed your trail west, and conveniently arrived just in time to kill Matthews." Mary noted skeptically. "Convenient timing," Coda agreed, a hint of dry humor entering his tone. "Mapia questions him daily. Story remains consistent. Was tracking Matthews, not us directly." Mary considered this information carefully. The James she had known had been charming, but unreliable, full of dreams, but empty of follow-through. The man who had abandoned his pregnant wife for California gold seemed utterly at odds with one who would spend months tracking her across hostile territory. "I need to see him," she decided, "to understand why he's really here." Coda nodded, accepting her decision without argument. "Tomorrow," he suggested, "when you are stronger." His hand moved to cover hers where it rested on Emma's head. "Whatever comes, remember you are not alone now." The simple statement, delivered without drama but with absolute conviction, filled Mary with a certainty she had never known in her previous life. Whatever James wanted, whatever complications his return might introduce, she had found something precious here with Coda, and among the Lakota not just safety or sanctuary, but belonging. "I know," she replied softly, turning her hand to intertwine her fingers with his. "That makes all the difference." James Sullivan had imagined this reunion countless times during his long search, tears, recriminations, tentative forgiveness, gradual reconciliation. The reality as he faced Mary across Mapia's teepee the next day bore no resemblance to those fantasies. The woman who regarded him steadily was not the desperate, fragile creature he had abandoned in Chicago. This Mary carried herself with quiet confidence despite her injuries. Her copper hair was braided in Lakota style, her clothing a practical blend of frontier and tribal elements. Most striking was the clarity in her eyes, no longer shadowed by fear or insecurity, but direct evaluating. "You look well," he began awkwardly. "Better than I've ever seen you, honestly." "Why are you here, James?" Mary asked directly, bypassing pleasantries. He swallowed, recognizing that he deserved no gentle reintroduction. "I came back for you," he said simply. "To Chicago, 7 months ago." "But you were already gone." 7 months, Mary repeated incredulously. "You left us a year and a half before that. Not a word, not a penny sent." "I know." James acknowledged, his gaze dropping to his hands, once soft with city living, now calloused and scarred from mining and hard travel. "I was a coward, a fool. The mines changed me, Mary. Seeing men die daily, realizing what truly matters." He looked up, meeting her skeptical expression with painful honesty. "When I returned to Chicago and found you gone, when I heard what had happened at the Gilded Stag, I started searching. Every settlement, every trading post, following rumors of a red-haired woman traveling with a Sioux warrior." "How did you find us here specifically?" Mary pressed suspicion, evident in her tone. "I've been tracking Matthews for weeks," James explained. "After learning about his connection to Blackwood, about their operation, I knew he was hunting you. Figured following him would lead me to you eventually. And you just happened to arrive precisely during our battle with perfect timing to kill the man who threatened your abandoned family." Mary's voice dripped skepticism. "After being completely absent when we actually needed protection," James flinched at the justified accusation. "I deserved that," he admitted. "And I have no right to expect forgiveness. But yes, the timing was providential." A bitter laugh escaped him. "Though I've been watching the camp for 3 days, trying to find a way to approach without getting killed by your protectors." Mary's eyes narrowed. 3 days before the battle? James nodded, realizing too late the implication. "I saw you," he confessed quietly. "With him. With Emma." The image had burned itself into his memory, Mary and their daughter sitting outside a teepee with the Lakota warrior, laughing at something the child had done, the picture of a family he had no part in. "I saw that you had built something here. Without me. You gave up any claim to our lives when you walked away," Mary stated flatly. "What did you expect to happen, James? That I would magically preserve myself in amber, waiting eternally for your return?" "No." He sighed, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "I don't know what I expected. To make amends somehow. To be the husband and father I should have been from the beginning." His eyes met hers directly. To have some place in her life at least. In Emma's life. The naked longing in his voice caught Mary off guard. She had anticipated demands, perhaps even threats, to assert his legal rights as Emma's biological father. This humility, this willingness to accept crumbs rather than demand the feast, was unexpected. "Why should I allow that?" she asked, genuinely curious. "Why should I let you into her life now, when you couldn't be bothered to be present for her birth, for her first steps, for the nights she fought for breath with pneumonia while I contemplated selling myself to buy medicine?" Each question landed like a physical blow. James accepted them without defense, his expression reflecting genuine remorse. "I have no justification," he acknowledged. "Only a request for mercy I don't deserve." He hesitated before adding, "And perhaps the hope that knowing something of her biological father might someday be important to her, even if not to you." The simple truth of this statement gave Mary pause. Emma Wichapi was blessed with Kota's protective love and guidance. But someday, She might indeed wonder about the man whose blood ran in her veins, whose features she partially carried. "I need to discuss this with Coda," Mary said finally. "He is her father now, in all ways that matter." James nodded acceptance, warring with hope in his expression. "I understand. And Mary?" He hesitated, words clearly difficult to form. "I'm glad you found safety. Found happiness. Even if it's not with me." As Mary departed the teepee, she was surprised to find Makpia waiting outside, his expression unreadable. "War Chief," she acknowledged respectfully. "Sister." He returned, using the term that recognized her as family through Coda. "The former husband speaks truth about tracking Matthews. My scouts confirm his camp was separate, that he followed sheriff's men for many days." This independent verification eased one of Mary's concerns, though others remained. "What do you make of him?" she asked, valuing the chief's perspective. Makpia considered before answering. "Man carries great shame, also great determination. Killed enemy of band without hesitation." His piercing gaze met Mary's directly. "Not same man who abandoned woman and unborn child. Whether change is enough?" He shrugged. "That is for you and brother to decide." Finding Coda proved unnecessary, as he approached from the direction of the horse corrals, Emma riding contentedly on his hip. At the sight of Mary, the child reached out eagerly to be transferred to her mother's arms. "You have seen him," Coda observed, noting her troubled expression. Mary nodded, settling Emma against her uninjured side. "He wants to know her, to have some place in her life." Coda's face revealed nothing, but Mary had learned to read the subtle tension in his shoulders, the careful neutrality that masked deeper emotions. "What do you wish?" he asked simply. Mary considered the question with all its complex implications. "I wish he had never returned," she admitted honestly. "Our life was clearer without him in it." She looked down at Emma, who was contentedly playing with her mother's necklace. "But someday she may want to know him, to understand that part of herself." Coda was silent for a long moment before speaking. "Lakota children know many fathers," he finally said. "Uncles, grandfathers, mothers, brothers, all teach different lessons. You'd allow it?" Mary asked, somewhat surprised by his apparent openness. "Some relationship between them. Allow is wrong word," Coda corrected gently. "Not my right to forbid child from knowing blood father, but my right and yours to set terms, to protect." The wisdom of this perspective, so different from the possessive, exclusive concept of family Mary had grown up with, struck her profoundly. In the Lakota way, family expanded rather than contracted children, benefiting from multiple influences rather than being limited to a single paternal figure. "You constantly surprise me," she murmured, her free hand reaching for his. A rare smile touched Coda's lips. "Good. Life without surprise becomes stagnant pool instead of flowing river." His expression grew more serious. "Winter solstice approaches. Sacred time for people. Time when important decisions are made, new beginnings blessed." Mary recognized the deliberate shift in conversation, sensing something significant in Coda's carefully chosen words. "What decisions do you contemplate for this solstice?" she asked, heart quickening despite herself. "Among our people." Coda began his voice, dropping to an intimate register despite their public setting. "When a man wishes to court a woman, he must speak his heart 3 times. If she refuses him thrice, he must never speak of such things again." The breath caught in Mary's throat as she realized what was happening. Emma, sensing the moment's importance, fell uncharacteristically silent blue eyes, moving between the adults with solemn curiosity. "This is my first speaking Mary Sullivan." Coda continued, his voice resonant with quiet dignity. "I ask if you would consider joining your path to mine, being mother to my children, and allowing me to be father to yours. Though she had grown familiar with Lakota courtship customs during her months with the band, the reality of this formal proposal delivered with such sincere gravity moved Mary more deeply than any flowery declaration could have. She thought of the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment, from desperate poverty in Chicago to belonging in a community that valued strength, honor, and family above all. "I would consider it," she replied softly, using the traditional formula for such occasions. "I would consider it very seriously, Coda of the Lakota people." The ghost of a smile touched his lips, understanding that while custom prevented immediate acceptance, her response was as positive as propriety allowed for a first speaking. Emma, apparently deciding the serious moment had passed, reached out to pat Coda's face with familiar affection, drawing a rare laugh from the warrior. Later that evening, as Mary entered Mahpia's teepee, where a council had been called to determine James's status, she carried herself with newfound certainty. Whatever complications her former husband's return might introduce, the foundation of her new life remained solid, built on mutual respect, shared values, and a love that had grown not from desperate need or romantic fantasy, but from genuine understanding. James awaited expression, betraying his anxiety as the band's leaders assembled. Mahpia took his place at the circle's head, Coda at his right hand, other respected warriors completing the circle. Mary was motioned to a position of honor beside Coda, recognition of her status within the band. "We decide tonight," Mahpia announced without preamble, "what becomes of Wasichu men who helped defeat enemies of band." The implications hung clearly in the air. James had earned consideration through his actions against Matthews, but his future relationship with the band remained uncertain. "I've spoken with Mary," James said before anyone else could begin, his voice steady despite his evident nervousness. "I understand that her life and Emma's is here now with your people. With," his eyes flickered briefly to Coda, "those who have earned the right to be called family." Murmurs of surprised approval rippled through the council at this unexpected humility. James continued, having clearly rehearsed his words carefully. "I ask only for the opportunity to know my daughter in whatever capacity Mary deems appropriate. Not to interfere with her upbringing or to challenge those who have truly been there for her, but simply to be present in some small way." He swallowed visibly. "I've secured employment at the trading post in LaPorte, 2 days' ride from here. Close enough to visit occasionally, if permitted, far enough to respect your boundaries." The practical solution, implemented without presumption of their response, suggested genuine sincerity. Mary glanced at Coda, whose expression remained carefully neutral, as he studied James with penetrating intensity. "No, Akukuk, why should we trust you will not bring more Wasichu trouble?" Chayton demanded, voicing the concern uppermost in many minds. "Your kind breaks promises like dry twigs." "A fair question," James acknowledged with surprising grace. "I can only offer my word, which I know means little given my past actions, and the observation that I killed a U.S. law officer to protect this band. My bridges to that world are thoroughly burned." This stark truth carried undeniable weight. No matter his intentions, James Sullivan had irrevocably marked himself as an enemy of conventional authority through his actions against Matthews. Mahpia turned to Mary, according her the honor of weighing this matter that most directly affected her family. "What say you, sister? Does this man deserve place at our fire, even at edges?" Mary felt the weight of all eyes upon her, the council's, James's, and most importantly, Coda's. She thought of Emma, who deserved to know her origins, even as she embraced her adopted culture. She thought of her own journey from victim to survivor, to this moment of genuine agency. "I believe," she began carefully, "that people can change. I have changed. This band has changed me." Her gaze met James's directly. "The man before us is not the same man who abandoned us in Chicago. Whether that change is enough to earn trust, She glanced at Coda, drawing strength from his steady presence. That can only be proven through time and actions. Mahpia nodded, wisdom evident in his measured response. Then, this is our judgment. James Sullivan may visit band when moon is full, no more than 2 days each visit. Will be watched first 3 visits. May speak with child only when mother or Coda present. His expression hardened slightly. Break these terms, attempt to take child or woman away, consequences will be permanent. The threat required no elaboration. James nodded, his acceptance, relief evident in his features at being granted even this limited connection. Thank you, he said simply. I won't waste this chance. As the council concluded, James approached Mary hesitantly. May I see her before I leave tomorrow? Mary considered briefly before nodding. Briefly, in the morning. She's sleeping now. Thank you. He repeated, genuine gratitude in his voice. And Mary, I truly am happy you found safety. Found? His eyes flickered to Coda, who stood protectively nearby. Someone worthy of you both. The acknowledgement, offered without bitterness or manipulation, suggested a maturity in James that Mary had never witnessed during their marriage. Perhaps the mines truly had changed him, stripping away the charming irresponsibility that had once defined him, leaving behind someone capable of genuine reflection. Good night, James, she said simply, turning away to join Coda as they walked toward their shared teepee, where Emma slept under Wachiwi's watchful eye. He accepts reality more easily than expected, Coda observed as they moved through the quiet camp. Mary nodded, still processing the evening's developments. The James I married would have demanded threatened, attempted charm. This man... She shook her head slightly. I barely recognize him. People change, Coda noted, echoing her earlier words. Sometimes by choice, sometimes because life leaves no alternative. The profound simplicity of this observation reminded Mary yet again of the wisdom that drew her to this man. His ability to see beyond surface appearances to underlying truths, to navigate complexity with straightforward clarity. As they approached, their teepee sounds of celebration drifted from the center of camp, where preparations for the upcoming winter solstice ceremony had begun. In 3 days, the band would mark the turning of the year, the gradual return of light after darkness. What happens at the solstice ceremony? Mary asked, curious about the significance Coda had attached to this event earlier. Many things, he replied, a hint of mystery in his tone. Stories told, songs sung. He glanced at her, something warm in his gaze. New beginnings blessed if spirits favor. The implication hung between them, weighted with promise. Mary felt a flutter of anticipation in her chest, not the desperate need that had characterized her emotions in her previous life, but a calm certainty, a recognition of rightness. I look forward to understanding more of your traditions, Mary replied, matching his tone with gentle warmth. Inside the teepee, they found Emma sleeping peacefully, her fair hair now darkened slightly with walnut stain, a precaution begun when they first anticipated encounters with government agents. Wachiwi departed silently, leaving the small family alone in the flickering firelight. As Mary settled beside her daughter, Coda remained standing, an uncharacteristic hesitation in his posture. What troubles you? She asked softly, recognizing the subtle signs of his disquiet. Not trouble, he corrected, lowering himself to sit across from her. Question. He studied the sleeping child between them before meeting Mary's gaze directly. James returns. Adds, complication. Does it change things between us? Mary guessed immediately, understanding his concern. Coda nodded, once his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes betrayed vulnerability she had rarely glimpsed. James is my past, Mary stated firmly. A connection to Emma that can't be erased, but nothing more. Her hand reached across their sleeping daughter to touch Koda's arm. You are my present, my future, if you still wish it. The relief that crossed his stoic features was subtle but profound. I wish it, he confirmed quietly. Since day Snowhawk delivered you to Valley, I have wished it. Snowhawk? Mary questioned, unfamiliar with the term. A rare smile touched Koda's lips. My spirit name. Given in Vision Quest when 16 summers old. Few know it. The significance of him sharing this deeply personal aspect of himself was not lost on Mary. Protector who watches from heights, strikes when necessary. It suits you, she murmured, touched by his trust. Will Emma receive such a name someday? Already has. Koda replied, surprising her. Wichapi Star is beginning, when older Vision Quest reveals full spirit name. His hand gently touched the sleeping child's hair. Strong spirit in this one. Name will be powerful. As they talked quietly into the night, sharing stories and hopes with a new openness, Mary found herself marveling at the strange path that had led her here from desperate poverty in Chicago to this moment of profound belonging. Whatever challenges James's return might introduce, whatever trials the encroaching white world might present to this band in coming years, she faced them now from a position of strength rather than desperation. She had found her home. The winter solstice dawned clear and brutally cold. The snow-covered valley transformed into a glittering expanse of white beneath an endless blue sky. From early morning, the band was engaged in preparations. Special foods cooked, ceremonial clothing donned the central gathering space, cleared and adorned with symbolic elements representing the cycle of seasons. Mary found herself swept into women's preparations under Wachiwi's guidance. The elderly healer had taken particular interest in her appearance today, insisting on specific braiding patterns for her copper hair, applying ceremonial paint to her face, in designs Mary recognized as significant but couldn't fully interpret. Special day, Wachiwi explained with cryptic satisfaction when Mary questioned the elaborate preparations. Must honor spirits properly. Emma, too, received special attention, her darkened hair adorned with tiny blue beads that matched her eyes, her small face painted with delicate symbols that designated her status within the band. The child submitted to these ministrations with unusual patience, somehow sensing the day's importance. By midday, the entire band had gathered around the central fire for the beginning of ceremonies that would continue throughout the longest night of the year. Mapia, adorned in full ceremonial regalia, presided with dignified authority, first leading prayers in Lakota that asked for the sun's return and blessed the band's continued survival. Mary, positioned with the other women, searched the gathering for Koda, but didn't see him among the warriors across the circle. His absence was puzzling. He had left their teepee before dawn, explaining that he had traditional preparations to complete, but should have rejoined the community by now. As if sensing her question, Wachiwi leaned close. He comes soon, the elderly woman whispered. Special preparation for special ceremony. Before Mary could inquire further, a hush fell over the gathering as drums began a rhythmic beat. From the eastern edge of the circle, a procession appeared, warriors in ceremonial dress, their faces painted, their bearings solemn. At their center walked Koda, transformed by adornments Mary had never seen him wear. An elaborate headdress of eagle feathers, chest bare, despite the bitter cold body painted with symbols that spoke of accomplishments and status within the tribe. War Society honors him today. Wachiwi murmured for Mary's benefit. Recognize leadership in battle against Matthews. The warriors formed a semicircle before Mapia, who rose to address them in Lakota, too rapid for Mary to follow completely. She caught references to bravery, to protection of the band, to bonds stronger than blood. When Koda stepped forward to respond, his voice carried across the hushed gathering with quiet authority that commanded attention without demanding it. Following this exchange came a ceremony wherein Coda was presented with significant gifts, a specially crafted shield, a ceremonial pipe items, whose symbolic importance Mary could sense even without complete understanding. The band's approval was evident in the calls and gestures that accompanied each presentation. When this portion concluded, Mapia raised his hands for silence. "Today we honor not only warriors," he announced, switching to English in clear acknowledgement of Mary's presence. "Today we honor new beginnings, new bonds." He gestured toward Mary. Sister joined circle. Heart suddenly pounding, Mary rose Emma in her arms and moved to the indicated position opposite Coda. The significance of the moment crystallized with stunning clarity. This was no ordinary solstice ceremony, but something arranged specifically to honor their developing relationship. In moons past, Mapia continued addressing the gathered band. This woman came seeking sanctuary for herself and child. Many questioned this decision. A murmur of acknowledgement rippled through the crowd. Some feared she would bring only trouble. Others said no Wasichu could learn Lakota ways, could honor Lakota values. Mary felt the weight of dozens of evaluating gazes, but held herself proudly conscious of how far she had come since those first uncertain days. "For many moons we have watched," Mapia stated. "We have seen her work without complaint, learn without pride, fight beside warriors against common enemies. We have seen the child grow strong among our children, speaking our words, playing our games." He paused significantly. The time of testing has ended. The time of belonging has come. He gestured for Coda to step forward, and Mary found herself looking into the eyes of the man who had transformed from rescuer to protector to something infinitely more profound, partner match equal. "My brother has spoken his heart twice to this woman, according to our ways," Mapia informed the assembly. "Today before the band and beneath Father Sky, he speaks third time. All will witness." The significance of this public final speaking, usually conducted privately, was not lost on Mary. This was Mapia's ultimate endorsement, his way of declaring to the entire band that this union was not merely tolerated, but celebrated. Coda stood before her, his usual stoic demeanor, softened by an emotion Mary had learned to recognize despite his careful control. From around his neck, he removed a necklace of intricate beadwork, blue and white patterns, whose craftsmanship spoke of generations of tradition. "This belonged to my mother," he said, his voice pitched for her ears, though the silence of the gathering carried his words farther. "Before that, my grandmother. For 10 generations, women of my line have worn these beads at important moments." He held the necklace between them, firelight catching on the detailed patterns. "This is my third speaking, Mary Sullivan. I ask if you would join your path to mine, being mother to my children and allowing me to be father to yours." Though she had anticipated this moment since his second speaking weeks earlier, the public nature of this final proposal, the band's silent witness, the ceremonial context, lent it a weight Mary felt to her very core. This was not merely a union between two people, but an integration into the fabric of an entire community. A declaration of belonging that transcended her Wasichu origins. From the traditional response she had been taught, Mary chose directness that honored both her adopted culture and her own heart. "Yes, Coda of the Lakota people," she answered clearly, her voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "I would join my path to yours for all the days I have remaining." A collective exhalation swept through the assembly, followed by approving calls and gestures. Coda placed the necklace around her throat with careful reverence, his fingers brushing against her skin with deliberate tenderness. Then, breaking slightly with tradition, he included Emma in the moment, touching the child's head in blessing as she watched with solemn curiosity from Mary's arms. What followed was a ceremony more elaborate than Mary had witnessed before. Sacred songs sung, prayers offered, symbolic gifts presented by various members of the band, Women came forward to embrace her as sister elders, to offer wisdom for the Union warriors, to pledge protection to the newly formalized family. Most moving was the moment when Wachiwi stepped forward with a special blanket one Mary recognized as having been worked on secretly by the women for weeks, its designs incorporating both traditional Lakota patterns and subtle elements that acknowledged Mary's Irish heritage. "One blanket for one family," the elderly healer announced as the beautiful creation was wrapped around all three of them, Coda, Mary, and Emma. Separate threads woven together become stronger than alone. As celebration continued into the afternoon and evening, food shared, stories told, songs sung in the Lakota language. That Mary was increasingly understanding, she found herself experiencing a sensation so unfamiliar, she almost didn't recognize it, complete contentment. For the first time since childhood, perhaps for the first time ever, she felt truly at home, truly accepted, truly valued for exactly who she was. Later, as night fell and the more sacred portions of the Solstice ceremony began, Mary and Coda retreated to their teepee, now formally designated as a family dwelling. Emma had fallen asleep during the festivities, exhausted by excitement and continuous attention from band members who now officially considered her their collective responsibility to nurture and protect. As they settled their daughter onto her sleeping furs, Coda's hand found Mary's in the dimness, their fingers intertwining with comfortable familiarity. "Happy?" he asked simply. "More than I knew was possible," she replied with equal directness. His arm encircled her shoulders, drawing her close against the winter chill that penetrated even their well-constructed dwelling. Long journey from Chicago streets to here. Mary leaned into his embrace, reflecting on the extraordinary path that had brought her from desperate motherhood on the edge of self-destruction to this moment of profound belonging. "Worth every step," she murmured. Outside drums marked the solstice night's progression, their rhythmic pulse a reminder of continuity amid change seasons, turning darkness, yielding eventually to light endings, becoming beginnings. Within their sheltered space, Mary and Coda sat in comfortable silence, watching over the sleeping child who had catalyzed their unlikely union. "She will have interesting life," Coda observed softly, his gaze resting on Emma. "Foot in two worlds. Challenge, but also strength. Like us." Mary responded, understanding the deeper truth of his observation. Neither she nor Coda fit neatly into the categories their respective societies had assigned them. Their strength came precisely from this liminality, this ability to stand at the threshold between worlds and choose consciously what to preserve, what to adapt, what to release. As the longest night slowly yielded to dawn, Mary Sullivan now, Mary of the Lakota people wife, to Coda, mother to Wichapi, watched the first pale light illuminate their small family. The path ahead would hold its own challenges. The encroachment of white settlers, the government's increasing pressure on native peoples, the delicate navigation of James's limited presence in their lives. But whatever came, they would face it, as they had faced everything since that fateful night at the Gilded Stag. Together forging their own path between worlds, writing their own story of what family truly meant.